The Robber Captain and the Miller's Daughters. Once there was a rich miller who lived all alone in a valley with his 3 beautiful daughters. The Robber Captain heard of them and drove up in a splendid carriage and asked the miller to give him shelter. He agreed to do so. As they sat at a table this evening and talked all sorts of things together, the stranger mentioned that he was still unmarried, and he asked the miller whether he would not give him one of his daughters as a wife. The miller, who thought the robber was a nobleman, and thought that the daughter could not be better looked after, said yes. The robber was to choose one, so he chose the eldest daughter. Now, the robber would have liked to have the wedding immediately, but the miller said that the dowry had to be prepared first. The stranger thanked him for this. The castle was well provided with everything, but the daughter herself wanted to see a bridegroom's house before she was married as well. So, the wedding was postponed and she went alone to visit him for the time being. But the journey was very long. They went through hill and valley, getting ever denser and deeper into the forest. "Isn't your castle coming soon?" she asked. More and more anxiously she got. "It will come soon," he said every time. "Just a little more patience." Finally, they actually arrived. Everything in the castle was beautifully arranged, and the bridegroom himself led his bride everywhere and showed her everything. He only left out a single room, and then he took her back to her parent and got married to her not long afterwards. The woman, however, did not like the castle at all. Her husband was often gone for weeks, and she didn't know where he went. And once he returned, he brought a whole bunch of rude people with him, who ate and drank and gambled. The poor woman often wished she was back at the mill with her parent. But what she found really strange was that her husband had so strictly forbidden her never to open the single room or look inside. Moreover, every time he went away, he gave her an egg. She was to keep it carefully and never let go of it. And the woman did so. But as soon as her husband went and came back, he always asked for the egg. One day, however, when he was away, the woman could not resist opening the forbidden door, and there she saw a whole room full of corpses and skeletons, and was so horrified that her whole body trembled and shook, and she dropped the egg. It was broken, and when the man came home and asked for the egg, she could not produce it. Then he noticed, from his wife's appearance and how she reacted, what she had done, and he said, "Now come with me. Now you may go inside the room yourself," because he looked into it. And he dragged her there and cut her throat and threw her with the corpses. Not long afterwards, the man took another carriage to the horses, and he dressed himself quite differently and drove to the miller again, and said that he had heard that he had 2 beautiful daughters, and that he should give him one of them as a wife. The miller was reluctant to do so, but agreed because the daughter wanted to, and immediately let her go with him and gave her a rich dowry. The second woman soon suffered the same fate as her sister. She was also given the egg when her husband went out, which she was supposed to carry carefully in her hand. And he had also forbidden her to ever open the door. But one day, when she unlocked the door to the death chamber and went in, she was so frightened that she dropped the egg into a bucket full of blood. And before she could wash it off, the husband returned, and he saw the blood on the egg and said, "Now it's all over for you," and led her into the chamber and cut her throat. The robber chief, however, knew how to disguise himself so cleverly that when he came to the miller again for the third time and asked for his youngest daughter, the miller did not recognize him again, but thought he was a completely different person actually. With much effort, he finally got the third daughter too, and he treated her just like he did the other sisters. He strictly forbade her to open the door to this room, and every time he went out, he gave her an egg, which she was to carry all the time. This woman, however, was cautious and put the egg into a basket and left it there whenever she went about in the castle. One day, she came to the forbidden door which she had often looked at, and thought, well, you should just see what is in there. And she opened the door. But how frightened she was when she found nothing but corpses, and amongst them the heads of her two sisters still could be recognized. She quickly sat down and wrote a fake letter, as if her father was seriously ill and wished for her to see him once more before he died. When the robber came home and found the woman very sad, he immediately asked about the deck. It was not broken, but the woman begged him for everything in the world to take her to the father, who was dying and wished to see her once more. And when the robber read the letter, he finally gave in to her request, and they left in the morning. The woman, however, had secretly picked her sister's heads in the chest of clothes that she was taking with her, and was therefore very frightened when her husband wanted to turn back. He had forgotten to look after his birds, he said. The woman could well have thought that he meant the death chamber, and that she was afraid that he might have discovered what had happened there. Therefore she begged him so urgently and so tenderly not to delay the journey that he finally gave in and took her to the father. They thought him quite healthy, but the daughter immediately ordered her father's servants. They surrounded the house and they captured the robber. He was then brought before the court, condemned and executed. At the same time, however, the judge demanded that the young woman show his land the way to the robber's castle, so that the wicked man's helpers could also receive the punishment. The woman did this immediately and showed the man the way to the forest. But because she went ahead and the others were not paying attention and stayed behind, it happened that they suddenly lost the guide and turned back. The woman wandered around alone, and suddenly came across the band of robbers and was captured. So, we have the wicked woman who betrayed our captain, said the robbers, and decided to boil her alive in resin, and tied her to a tree, and went into the forest to fetch wood and resin. As the poor woman was weeping bitterly, the old mother of the beheaded robber suddenly came to her and untied her, because she felt so sorry for her. Then she hurried as fast as she could out of the forest and met a carter on the road who had loaded barrel rings. And she asked him to let her mount and hide under the rings, because the robbers might pursue her. But the man said, "That could cost me the cart and the horses. I don't want to have anything to do with the robbers." So the woman went away and soon came to a second carter who had barrels on the cart and also no courage to take the woman on. So she ran a little further, and then she came, quite exhausted, to a third who had loaded 12 troughs, each one bigger than the other, so that several could be placed, one inside the other. This carter picked them up and hid them under the lowest well stone and laid the rest on top of them. When the robbers returned with a lot of wood and resin and could not longer find the woman, they ran after her They hit the first carter with their tires and unloaded the entire cart from him, and hurried on when they didn't find the woman. They did the same to the second, and then they came to the third carter. They threw the wellstones down to the last one after another, until they reached the lowest one, until which the woman was hidden. The carter was terrified, but just as one of them grabbed the stone to pick it up, the new leader called out, "We will go on, she is not sitting under there." And so they left. And this last stone was still there, hiding her existence. The carter quickly loaded some stones back up, and then brought the woman safely to her father. The robbers were so angry with the woman that they tried several times to break into the mill at night and set it to fire. But when they came the third time, they were discovered and also taken into the prison. The miller, however, did not want to live in the mill any longer, and moved with his daughter to the neighboring town. The good carter who had saved the woman also lived there, and in gratitude for this and saving his daughter, because she would have been killed without him, the father actually decided that the daughter was to marry him, and they both lived there happy together for a very long time.